There are a dozen things that give a 5% return or more. What makes Shyft such a great investment? You know, that's a really good question, and I think it offers us the opportunity to point something out. Shyft is not an investment. It's insurance. We're not pitching this as an investment. We're not pitching Shyft as a way to get rich. I actually hate it when I see insurance people do that. Insurance people offer protection, not an investment. And I think part of the damage that's been done to the industry is not making that distinction. What we're presenting is a way to protect wealth while you're looking at what to invest in. So if it's a position or a strategy where you want to invest in stocks, bonds, real estate, gold, protect the money first. And then, based on the rate of return of your other investments, you're actually gaining on both sides. And it protects against losses. That way, if everything you've just invested in goes belly up, at some point in the future, your financial wellness of your family is still protected. So it's not an investment, it's insurance. It just happens to be the most powerful financial tool that I've seen in the past 25 years. How can this be used with employees? That's another great question. There are a lot of different ways you can use this product with employees. One of the easiest one is a strategic version of a key man. Key man policies have been around a long time. Most accountants and lawyers and financial planners haven't really realized the full strategy of how to use them, but it's like an amped up version of a key man. So let me give you an example. We had a woman who worked here for about 6 months. Part of the employment agreement for my company is if you work here, I have the right to take out a policy on you. I take her paycheck, I funnel it first through a policy on her, and then I borrow against it to pay her. She worked here for 6 months, went off and lived the rest of her life, yay her. But at some point in the future, and I hope it's a long time from now, but at some point in the future, myself, my company, or my heirs are going to get about $500,000 tax-free because she worked here for 6 months. That's one way to do it. There's other ways to do it. We can implement specific pre-tax strategies for companies that allow you to put a pre-tax contribution away that benefits the employer and the employees to the point where you can put that money away and still have access to up to 50% of that money as a flow of cash flow that you can use. There are other ways we can implement it where we use it as a reward program for employees. So let's say an employee is with you 5, 7, 10 years, whatever marker of loyalty you're looking for, then they can either have access to the cash, of course, a loan against cash values tax-free, so yay them. They can have ownership of the policy. They can make a beneficiary one of their kids. There's a lot of different ways to use this with employees. My best advice is to speak to a Shyft agent, and they can come up with your exact strategic plan. As a pastor, how can I use this to offer my church independence from donors? Well, that's kind of a loaded question. It's a great question, but it's a kind of a loaded question because what does this mean? So when you're looking at an example of a policy, you have that cash value, right? Now, the money that you put into a policy has already been taxed, so there's no reason to tax that. The death benefit is not taxed. That's just part of U.S. law. It's been that way for a long, long time. Now, the only thing that's possibly taxed in this conversation is really the growth inside of that policy. And just to be clear, if you were making great dividend returns and you take that as cash and it's above what you've contributed in terms of premium to that policy, that can be taxed if you take it as cash. Now, that's not a bad thing. That's a wonderful thing because that means you're making money. But the real power of this sort of program really gets realized when you say, hey, wait a second, let's take those earnings and don't cash them out. Use the insurance company's power and say, hey, I want to purchase more insurance company, which in a way is leveled paid up additions, right? Yeah. And that allows you to then keep the money in the insurance company. It's not taxed then. And you can borrow against that, not taxed. So it really offers you a way to in a sense, have the power of the cash flow without the tax liability of having it. It's an amazing tool. Like I've said before, in my 25 years of being an entrepreneur, speaking all over the world, seeing probably every imaginable product out there, this is by far the most powerful financial tool I've ever seen. I'm unsure of future income. What if my income goes down? You know what? I really understand that question, especially in this now COVID era where people lose their job and all that sort of thing. I get it. Now, this is another reason why these sort of programs are so beneficial and so powerful. Let's say, just to grab an arbitrary number, let's say you wanted to have a $10,000 a year premium. 65% of that might be in paid-up additions, or 50% of it, depending on your strategy, of course. But you have those paid-up additions, right? And then the other remaining portion is actually the insurance premium itself for the insurance. If something were to catastrophically happen, there's a few different options. First, if there's cash value in the policy, you can use that cash to cover your premium. That's why a lot of people, even on a 7-year pay program, only contribute for 5 and let the building of that policy cover the 6th and 7th year. That's a valid strategy. Another possibility is to say, okay, I don't have enough cash value to cover the premium policy. Okay, that's fine. Don't panic. In that case, what we can do is we can actually say to the insurance companies, okay, look, they don't have the income they once had. Let's decrease some of those level paid up additions. Let's keep the base insurance, but that's going to lower then that premium that needs to be paid in, up to possibly 60 to 65% lower. Well, that's a wonderful scenario too. Even if it lapses, the law requires that there's this ability to retrieve your policy. I know, it's amazing. I don't know why we don't teach about the power of insurance in schools. It is amazing. So the bottom line is that should never be a fear because you have so many solutions available to you, and when you contrast that to other places you can put your money, this wins hands down. How much cash value can I tap into in the first year? All right, that is a great question and an understandable question. Here's the situation, though. There's not one-size-fits-all answers. A lot of things play into this. First, the carrier that we use. Remember, Shyft-Capital is here for your benefit, not the carriers. We work for you, not the carriers. That means we try to get you the best situation possible. So that means a lot of things are going to come into play to this. Health condition, who the insured is it male, is it female? Are there other situations in terms of underwriting that might limit access to cash? Other things that play into this is the structure of the policy itself. How much is put into base insurance? How much is LPUA? How much is term, if there needs to be a term rider added to create a window? You know, there's a lot of things that play into this. However, I will say most of the policies that we structure give an 80 to 85% access to the guaranteed cash value within 14 days. Yes, 14 days. Now, contrast that with other things out there that say, well, over time, you build up cash value. And we could never use those sort of policies doing what we're doing. There's a market for that, but that's not this. In addition to that, we can get up to 80 to 82, 85, in some cases even 89 of the guaranteed cash or the non-guaranteed cash value by the end of that first year. The reality is you have access to a lot of cash value. Why not use an IUL or a VUL? So the IUL-VUL market has been marketed a lot lately. It is really popular with people who just want to make sales for sales purposes, who love to earn large commissions, and it's really popular in MLM-style insurance agencies. There is a market for IUL, and here's something that's really important to realize. I can sell you an IUL. Absolutely. If you really want one, Shyft-Capital can put you in one. The reality, though, is that in most cases, if you really look at the fine print of an IUL, there's a reason why most people who are like, oh man, I got ripped off in insurance, say that, because 9 out of 10 times, it's an IUL. IUL, the premium goes up, the cost of insurance goes up, the loans aren't participating. There's about 8 to 10 reasons why an IUL would never be selected for a lot of the strategies that we've talked about in the webinar. And it's a reason why banks and government entities and billionaires don't own IULs. Just think about that for a second. I know that the sales pitches sound shiny and nice, and they promise these crazy rates of return, but there's a reality. If those were awesome, then we would use them for the strategy because we have access to all the things that people are pitching you. The truth of the matter is that these policies that we implement are permanent, they're safe, and again, they are not the investment themselves. Anybody who comes along and tells you any insurance product is the investment, hit them with a Nerf bat. Insurance is insurance. It's a safe place to put your capital while you're working on other investments that produce real wealth. Now, the added benefit that you have security, tax-free growth, decent growth of 4, 5, 6, 8%, whatever it happens to be, awesome, awesome, awesome. But again, that's the protection vehicle, not the wealth creation vehicle. When you're ready to have the wealth creation talk, the 40, 60, 100, 500% returns on investments, we're here for you too, but that's not Shyft-Capital's wealth protection program. That falls more into line with our wealth creation sort of offerings. Does this tie into my income? So yeah, I think I understand the question. Does the amount of coverage tie into your income? And the answer to that is yes. Yep, it does. There's laws in place with insurance where you can't become more valuable dead than alive. So typically what happens is they will look at your income and your net worth and they will say, okay, well, let's do 20 times, 30 times, whatever that number is. So yeah, there's a cap. And it's kind of based on things like net worth and income. Now, here's the great news. It can increase. It really can increase. So if you get a better job, if you get married, if you get a doctorate in philosophy, well, maybe not a doctorate in philosophy, but if you improve your lifestyle standing, they can increase what they will underwrite you for. So it is tied into your income and net worth, yep. But as those things change, so too changes the amount of coverage and the amount of capital you can protect. What is the minimum and maximum I can put in? This is a great question. It's kind of related to another one of our FAQs. And the minimum is just enough for us to make the requirement for the carrier. Typically, that's about a face value of $25,000. Now, that is going to be largely dependent on age, sex, health condition, right? So somebody who's 19 and a female is going to be able to get $25,000 in face value coverage way cheaper than somebody who is, say, 72 and has been a cancer survivor. So really, it's the minimum required to hit the carrier's minimum face value amount. Pretty simple. I've seen that as low as $50 a month. Now, what's the maximum you can do? Whoo, well, doggy. That's something you're going to have to talk to an agent for, because I've seen it into the millions of dollars. Matter of fact, I've seen it into the tens of millions of dollars. So the top side of that is where we get really creative with strategy. How do insurance companies make money? All right, this is a question that I get asked a lot, because when people see this, if they come from a low to middle income class demographic, and there's nothing wrong with that, that's where I come from, but if you do, this probably sounds like Latin to you. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, this is too good to be true. How is this even possible? If this is possible, why is everybody not doing it? All that sort of stuff. The reality is, all the wealthy people are doing it. The reality is that it is true. It's been written into law for over 100 years. Just, it's new to you. Now, when it comes to the question of how do insurance companies actually make money, well, there's a few different ways. And I love to tell people the great thing about the insurance industry is the insurance industry can make money on math, not markets. So the first way they make money is insurance companies do invest your premium dollars, right? They do invest it in things. They invest it in secure, solid things, treasury bonds, long-hold real estate, stuff like that. But, and this is a really big but they also make money on math. And this is something that once you grasp this, you're never going to think to yourself, well, wait a second, how can they pay me? How do they make money? How does this work? Think about it. Let's take people out of the equation and let's talk about insured houses, right? Let's say there's 100,000 houses that are all insured by the same company. And they're all paying their monthly or yearly premiums on homeowners insurance. Out of 100,000 houses, how many houses a year get destroyed? 3, 5, maybe? Like really, it's tiny, tiny, tiny. Which means the premiums paid on those 99,995 other houses are profit. It's just math. Well, the same thing is true with this form of insurance. You have a situation where the company has, let's say, 4 million people insured, and they know, because there's a bunch of nerdy people in a room someplace playing with calculators and abacuses, figuring out how many people are going to die, what age they're going to die, and what's uncanny is how accurate these people really are. But anyway, they have figured out already 5, 10, 100 years from now how much profit they're going to be making because of the underwriting that they're undertaking. It is wonderful. It's beautiful. It's one of the best industries because unlike most industries that are solely based on market, sure, there's some market involved with insurance, but largely insurance companies make money not on market, but on math. Why hasn't my financial guy told me about this? This is one of the questions I get asked the most. I tell people all the time, and I'm not meaning to insult your financial guy, right? But everybody's got a guy. I tell people all the time, either A, your financial advisor knew about this and didn't tell you, or B, your financial advisor didn't know about this. Either way, you need a new financial advisor. The reality is that we are not trying to take the place of investments. We're not. And most likely your financial advisor is putting you in Wall Street-based products. There's a place for that, there's a market for that, but as we covered in the webinar, me personally and for our clients and our employees, that's not where I feel safe enough to put our important money. The reality is that most financial advisors are never taught about this. Most financial advisors are not focusing on people who have $50, $80, $100 million to protect. They're focusing on people who make $100, $200, $400 grand a year. And like we said in the webinar, largely these sort of products were limited to those people who traditionally had a ton of money. As a matter of fact, even to start Shyft-Capital, we had to sign affidavits and letters to these carriers saying that, yes, we could produce X amount of money to be placed with the carrier. So I've been on a ton of webinars and live meetings with financial advisors, lawyers, accountants, and CPAs where they've heard of this. Well, a lot of them have heard of it, but they'll look at the other people in the room and say, I didn't know that we could have access to it. So it's not that your financial advisor necessarily doesn't know about it. If they do know about it, they probably thought that you couldn't have access to it. Now, with that being said, most people have no clue this exists. When they think of insurance, they think of regular whole life that can accumulate cash value over time. Nothing wrong with that. They think of buy term and invest the difference, right? Personally, that's kind of the antithesis of smart money management, but whatever. There's a market for that. There's IUL and UL. Look, I can, as an agency, I can offer those products to you too. If you want those, hey, yes. But what we're talking about is not something that's talked about. I remember I was at a speaking engagement in the country of Chile, and I was talking to somebody who has a PhD in economics, literally a doctor of money, right? You've probably seen him on TV as a leading economist. And he told me, Josh, they never taught us this existed. I have talked to money managers who've worked for large firms. We have on staff somebody who used to be a financial planner under the Dave Ramsey umbrella. We had another guy through our courses who has $200 million under management personally. They never taught him this. So don't blame your financial advisor. Now, a real quick kind of word of advice. Financial advisors, if you go and tell your financial advisor about this without taking along a Shyft agent, they're going to assume they know everything based on what you told them. And unless you can explain it back as well as I have explained it to you, they're not really being able to make a decision or give advice based on the entire truth. My advice to you would be take your financial representative from Shyft-Capital with you when you go and talk to your financial advisor. That'd be my piece of advice. And also, keep in mind that a lot of financial advisors, they get paid a commission that you're paying based on the amount of money that you place with their products. Well, this can sometimes seem as if we are taking money from them through you being a client of theirs and possibly being a client of ours. So there tends to be a little bit of a chest puff posturing. Well, that's not da-da-da, and mine da-da-da, and this does da-da-da. I had one financial advisor, just a real quick story here, real quick. I had a financial advisor who their client just came to one of the speeches I've done and went to them, and, we got on the phone together, and it was from the get-go an arm wrestling match, He starts telling me about the rule of 72, and in the past 7.5 years, my client has almost doubled their money, as if that's good. Quick disclaimer, that's not good. Anyway, but, that whole posturing thing, as if I've never heard of it, right? And the reality was that he had this fear that somehow we were taking a client away from him, so he was fighting. And I said, no. We are not an investment. We're a place to protect the money, so your client actually feels more comfortable giving you more money than they did before. Because if you can protect it first, and there's a sense of safety, and even if a deal goes sideways or a stock goes kaput, your family will never have to long-term be without that capital. How much more capital would they give you? So that's kind of my advice on why your financial advisor may have avoided talking about this. It's one of those options. I hope that helps.